As I'm sure many of you already know, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point suffered an accident in August of 2021, where a metal piece known as a flag plate fell from the green train and struck a guest waiting in line for the ride. The guest suffered a major head injury and was immediately taken to the hospital. I'm unsure of the victim's current health standing, but I wish them, their family, and loved ones all the best. My thoughts and prayers are with you. After the accident, Top Thrill Dragster remained closed for the rest of the 2021 season, and Cedar Point has kept the ride closed for all of the 2022 season. In the meantime, rumors have been circulating that Cedar Point is working on major changes to Top Thrill Dragster that would keep bystanders in the surrounding area safer, as well as make the problematic roller coaster more reliable. Up until recently, we've had no real indication if Cedar Point would ever reopen Top Thrill Dragster. The only hint we got was when the park announced on August 11th of this year that they'd be introducing Wild Mouse in 2023 as the park's 18th roller coaster. Wild Mouse can only be the park's 18th coaster if Top Thrill Dragster remains, as the park currently has 16 operating roller coasters when you exclude Top Thrill Dragster, and that count does include Pipe Scream, which Cedar Point oddly classifies as a roller coaster. Well, just this morning on September 6th, Cedar Point released the following statement: "We have an important update to share regarding our Top Thrill Dragster roller coaster. After 19 seasons in operation with 18 million riders experiencing the world's first strata coaster, Top Thrill Dragster as you know it is being retired. However, Cedar Point's legacy of ride innovation continues. Our team is hard at work, creating a new and reimagined ride experience. We'll share more details and information at a later date." So this is basically confirmation that Top Thrill Dragster will be remaining at the park and should reopen at some point in the near future, but with some sort of alteration. The update specifically mentions that the experience as we know it will be retiring, and that the park team is hard at work reimagining the ride experience. This is great news to me, as not only do I love Top Thrill Dragster, but I was also fortunate to work the attraction as a ride operator for a few weekends in 2018. In my opinion, working an attraction as a ride operator gives you a deeper connection to a ride than you can get from just riding as a guest, as you really learn all the ride's quirks and odd behaviors. Now that's just a small plug that you should work as a ride operator, but let's continue. Top Thrill Dragster is the world's second hydraulic launching roller coaster built by Intamin Amusement Rides. And as many of you know, while the hydraulic launch provides a massive amount of power that accelerates Dragster's 5-car trains from 0 to an advertised 120 miles per hour in 3.8 seconds, it's quite a complicated launch system prone to many mechanical and technical issues that often force the ride to close. Now please do not take anything I say in this video as finite, as I'm just speculating, but let's examine what the park could be doing to Top Thrill Dragster. Like many of you, I'd guess that the reimagining of Dragster has to do with the removal of the amazing but troubling hydraulic launch. I've heard many rumors that the park will be replacing the hydraulic launch with a linear synchronous motor or LSM launch system, most likely manufactured by Innovative Drive Technologies or in Drive Tech, who produce the LSM launches used on Intamin roller coasters. In fact, Intamin has actually discontinued their hydraulic launching roller coaster and now only offer an LSM launching roller coaster. While Intamin LSM coasters are not perfect, they're far more reliable when compared to hydraulic launch coasters. So could Cedar Point be replacing Dragster's complicated hydraulic launch with an LSM launch? It's a possibility. In fact, I'm already hearing that fences are being placed around the ride station and launch area, so work is getting underway. Red Forest at Ferrariland in Spain utilizes an Drive Tech LSM launch that accelerated small 3-car trains from nearly 0 to an advertised 111.9 miles per hour in 5 seconds, which is enough speed to get the trains up and over a 367-foot tall top hat. Additionally, technology is always improving, and I'd guess that in Drive Tech have produced more powerful and efficient LSM stators that could launch trains fast enough to climb up and over a 420-foot tall top hat. The only catch is that LSM launches do not offer the same acceleration that hydraulic launch systems do, and I doubt the technology has been improved to a point where this is possible, meaning an LSM launch will most likely need more space. So would an LSM launch be able to fit on Dragster? For cost reasons, I don't believe the 420-foot tall top hat will be altered, so that will most definitely remain in place as it currently is. Altering the launch system itself is probably already an expensive endeavor, so I doubt we'll see any changes to the ride's layout. I'd imagine the ride's on load station, and transfer track, which is used to move trains on and off the main track to the storage tracks, will remain as well. So the LSM launch would have to fit within the same length of track from the end of the transfer track to some point before or slightly up the top hat. Top Thrill Dragster's current launch ends right here, just before the hydraulic room underneath the end of the launch. But trains don't accelerate during that entire length of track. Trains are pulled down the track by what's called a catch car, a critical component of the ride's hydraulic launch system. I believe that trains only accelerate until the catch car reaches this location here, at the last light pole before the ride's entrance. At this location is when the catch car encounters the catch car brakes indicated here. These metal brake fins interact with magnets on the catch car that slow it down, as well as the entire launch system. So as soon as the launch system begins slowing down, the train continues forward with its own momentum. Using Google Earth, we can estimate the length of track that trains actually accelerate on. When the launch begins, the front of each train is at the end of this small catwalk on the left, but the start of the catch car is maybe a car length behind that, as the rear of the catch car connects to car 3. So if we measure from about right here, which I believe is where the catch car is positioned at the start of a launch, to when the catch car brakes begin at this light post, I get approximately 275 feet, which by the way, seems like a ridiculously short distance for a train to accelerate to an advertised 120 miles per hour. Technically, I think the acceleration time of the ride is faster than the advertised 3.8 seconds, as the train reaches this point in just about 3 seconds. Now let's compare to Red Force, which as I mentioned earlier, accelerates smaller 3-car trains from nearly 0 miles per hour to 111.9 miles per hour in 5 seconds with its LSM launch. The longer acceleration time and similar speed means that trains require a further distance to accelerate and then reach that top speed. The ride's launch track actually ends as trains are pulling up into the top hat, as pictured here, where you can see the LSM stators curving up with the track. And the launch begins as trains are exiting the station building about right here. Using Google Earth, I estimate this length to be about 515 feet, 47% longer than the roughly 275 feet of track Dragster's trains accelerate on. But Dragster's total launch track is actually slightly longer than 515 feet, since the catch car and launch system need room to come to a stop. The existing launch track ends right at the hydraulic launch building, which gives an overall length of about 527 feet if I begin measuring right from where trains start accelerating, so it's roughly 12 feet longer than Red Force's launch. Now Red Force is shorter in height with a 367 foot tall top hat, whereas Dragster's is 420 feet tall. So at the same rate of acceleration as Red Force, Dragster would need a longer launch track to reach its higher top speed. Dragster also operated with a 5-car train compared to Red Force, which operates with a smaller 3-car train. More cars means more weight, meaning the launch would need to be even longer on Dragster unless its trains are shortened. Looking into Dragster further, it's unlike most of the other intimate hydraulic launching coasters because the top hat isn't immediately following the launch track. Notice the straight track before the climb upwards, whereas Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure begins climbing the tower right at the end of its launch track. So when you account for this extra length in track, I estimate there's an available 616 feet of continuous straight track. And as I just mentioned, the launch on Red Force actually extends slightly into the ascent of the top hat. So if Dragster were to do the same and had LSMs to about right here, that could mean a potential 696 feet of available space for an LSM launch. So 181 feet longer than Red Force. Now here are some other considerations that support the viability of an LSM launch on Top Thrill Dragster. One is that the ride doesn't actually launch to 120 miles per hour. For example, with a fully loaded train, Kingda Ka launches at an average speed of 118 miles per hour to clear its top hat, 10 miles per hour slower than its advertised speed of 128 miles per hour. I've personally launched hundreds of trains on Kingda Ka as I used to operate the ride, and the ride computer lists every launch speed. Dragster is similar, and from what I remember when working the ride, it also ran slower at about 110 to 115 miles per hour. And since the speed was achieved halfway down the launch track, the train would bleed off some speed before climbing the top hat. So with an LSM launch being longer, the train would most likely hit its top speed right before the top hat, or as the train begins to climb the top hat, rather than halfway down the launch track. This means there's no chance for the train to bleed off any speed before ascending the top hat. So the launch speed could be slightly less since it doesn't have to account for trains losing speed before the climb. And as I mentioned earlier, EnDriveTech could now have more powerful LSM stators that could maybe launch a smaller train to the required speed and a shorter distance on Dragster compared to Red Force. Or maybe even launch the current 5-car trains to the required speed and the distance provided currently. That's what I'm really curious to see, as keeping the 5-car trains will help to keep Dragster's capacity higher, and the longer train does provide great whip for back car riders down the 400-foot drop. I don't think a 3-car train train or even a 4-car train would provide the same whip. I'm also curious to see if Dragster's original trains would be reused. Roller coaster trains are not cheap, and I'm sure purchasing new trains would add to the cost of this project immensely. So maybe we'll see the same trains repurposed. So now that we've analyzed if an LSM launch would be viable on Top Thrill Dragster, let's examine how an LSM launch would improve the ride's reliability and reduce operating costs. I hear the park was spending around $2 million a year on the parts and maintenance necessary to keep Dragster running. Hydraulic launch systems are no joke and require so many parts, like the massive accumulation tanks, hydraulic fluid and oil, dozens of motors, a massive cable winch, the catch car, pulleys for the launch cables, and of course the launch cables themselves, which I believe Cedar Point replaces 3 times a year. Then there are hundreds of movable brake fins on the launch track, as well as dozens and dozens of movable brake fins for the catch car that I was talking about earlier. And all of these components are littered with sensors that often go bad and need to be replaced. I'd compare the hydraulic launch to an internal combustion engine in a gas-powered car, but I think it's more like the complexity of an even older steam locomotive, just more modern of course. Whereas LSM launches are more like electric cars, where there are hardly any components and far fewer moving parts. In fact, pretty much all of the components found on an Intamin LSM launch are static, besides some of the brake fins that do move up and down. But the number of movable brake fins is ridiculously less, meaning less potential for issues with those. And for my time at Top Thrill Dragster and Kingda Ka, the catch car brakes cause a lot of issues. I'd say the major change to operating with an LSM launch would be the rise in the ride's electrical consumption, but I'm sure that would be properly accounted for if Dragster were to be converted to an LSM launch. We'll have to wait and see what further information Cedar Point releases about Top Thrill Dragster, as well as the work the park begins performing to the attraction. I personally think the bulk of the ride's reimagining will be to the ride's launch system, and maybe an update to its name or theming to gain more attention from the public. But I doubt we'll see any changes to the ride's layout, as that would just be far too costly for a ride as large and fast as Dragster. Plus, none of the ride's issues really had anything to do with the layout, and the ride was already pretty popular just as it was. So I don't really see what benefit there is to adding on to the ride's layout unless Cedar Point just has a lot of money to spend. I'd personally prefer to see the ride's final brake run be altered so that it can be classified as the ride's 9th block zone as intended, which would make 6 train operations make sense, or for the ride to receive a major programming upgrade to allow multi-move to work as originally intended. For more information on those issues, check out my problematic roller coasters video on Top Thrill Dragster. Anyway, I think that will do it for this update video, and hopefully I'm on to something. If I'm not, please ignore this video. Comment down below what you think will happen at Top Thrill Dragster. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.